We're inching closer to having all the Big Ten coordinators put together. Who will they be? And welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, presented and brought to you by FanDuel. Appreciate having you here as we are going to be talking through a lot of different things in the Big Ten. Obviously, Indiana has won the national championship, but that news does not dominate everything, as we still have news in the Big Ten. We have three more coordinators that need hired at Ohio State, USC, Rutgers. Going to talk about those possibilities. Jordan Seaton is still in play over there at Colorado. Well, transferring from Colorado, could go to Oregon. Going to talk about that. And then we got two of the biggest personalities in college football that admitted they were wrong. Paul Finebaum, who didn't really respect Indiana all season long, and Josh Pate, who picked against Indiana 4 or 5, maybe it was even 6 times this season. We both got videos from them, and I want to review those with you and share our thoughts together here. So please do like, subscribe, do all that good stuff here on the Big Ten Huddle. We appreciate you being a part of the show. Leave your comments down below. If you're listening to podcasts, listening to it on the podcast, 5-star rating and review always helps as well. Without further ado, let's get into this stuff. So the Big Ten is hiring their coordinators, and many of them have been hired at this point. D'Anton Lynn to Penn State, all these other guys. But USC, Rutgers, and Ohio State are still searching. Now, let's start with USC because according to reports, this one is pretty much a done deal at this point. And Zach and I told you about a week ago that, it was pretty much a done deal at this point, but things were kind of just needed to be announced. And right now you've got reports from 24/7, CBS saying that Gary Patterson is closing in on being the defensive coordinator at USC. Now, when this news first broke by Scott Schrader over there at We Are SC, the On3 site for USC, that there was discussions with Gary Patterson, a little uneasy about it because there was some news, some rumors that Patterson might want to get rid of the defensive staff. Well, it looks like Patterson may have accomplished that with one of the coaches, as Doug Belk, the secondary coach there at USC, does not have his contract re-upped, extended, whatever you want to call it. That happened on Tuesday, and so it looks like Gary Patterson will most likely come in and replace Doug Belk there as that position coach. I mean, it's not for sure. I mean, it could also be that Gary Patterson has his own coach for that he wants to bring in and could possibly do that. We'll see how it all shakes out. That could be what's holding up some of this news, is that they want to get all the ducks in a row when they announce it. Who really knows? But that's kind of the way things are trending right now. I think it's going to be very surprising if Gary Patterson is not the guy. And if he's not the guy, I think that you're seeing a complete reset in a coaching search here. Maybe Wink Martindale, maybe somebody else, Corey Batone from Missouri, but those names seem to be long gone at this point. It seems like Gary Patterson is the guy. So we'll see how that works out, especially with Doug Belk and his contract not being extended. The next one is Rutgers, who is hiring their defensive coordinator. Indiana fans, we got some talking about you to do here, because it does look like Rutgers wants Ola Adams to be the defensive coordinator there at Rutgers. Now, Ola is the safeties coach over there at Indiana, did a fantastic job this season. Lewis Moore, Amari Farrell are, they've been fantastic this year at the safety position for Indiana. And he's done a really, really good job. Apparently, Ola does have some connections to possibly make Greg Schiano want to bring him in as the defensive coordinator. And it's kind of lined up with the timeline too, right? Rutgers has had this position open for almost 2 months now. And so the thought process is, okay, well, if we're going to do this, we need to get somebody good. But the problem is that Greg Schiano is known as a pretty tough coach to work for, and Rutgers is not exactly the most well thought of place to go start your coordinator job or whatever else it might be. Now, maybe Ola does not care about that and he just wants to go someplace and be a defensive coordinator. If so, then Greg Schiano is typically a good guy to be a defensive coordinator under, and a lot of good coaches got their start as a coordinator coach or a positional coach at Rutgers. It's not a school that, if you do well at Rutgers, typically people are going to take notice because they're going to say Rutgers doesn't have the talent. He did well there. Let's give him a shot over here. Let's give him a shot there and see what he can do. So if Ola does take that route, he would be betting on himself. He would be betting on his ability to go there and create a good defense for Greg Schiano. I would love the hire if it happens. But at the same time, we're also 2 days removed from the national champ, 3 days removed at this point, if you're listening to this Thursday morning, from the national championship, and he's still not hired. You would understand, like, okay, take Tuesday to celebrate. Okay, work things out with your contract on Wednesday, and you would think that you would announce it then, but that's not been what's happened at this point. So if Ola is not announced the defensive coordinator at Rutgers by the end of Thursday, maybe it happens on Friday. Maybe there's like a news dump on Friday that goes for. But if it doesn't happen by Friday late in the day, I would say then Rutgers is probably going to have to go look elsewhere, or worst case scenario. Not worst case scenario. There are worse things. Rob Smith could always be rehired. I guess not. Let's hope not. I hope I didn't speak that into existence. But I think the other scenario here is probably that Greg Schiano takes over and the play calling on defense. It just did not go well last season. It was obvious that he did do that. So maybe he thinks we just need to, get somebody that I can trust. I can trust myself or something. If that happens, I don't love it for Rutgers. I don't love it for Greg Schiano, but if you can't find somebody, what are you going to do? It's also possible that Greg Schiano is just completely locking in on Ola Adams here and wants him. I mean, that's kind of what he did with Kirk Shiraka, right? He just kind of locked in on him. Kirk didn't really want the job, from what some reports out there were saying. That's not me reporting it. That's me reading other reports and telling you what they said. But that is kind of, a possibility of what could be happening here. In all honesty, none of us really know. Greg Schiano does a great job of holding this stuff close to the vest and having some, some secrecy here in this. It could be somebody that nobody is talking about for Rutgers. And like I said, if we get to the end of Friday and it hasn't happened yet, then we might just have to throw our hands up in the air and say, Greg's got somebody, or Greg's got himself at this point. We'll see what happens. The final coordinator position to talk about is Ohio State. Ohio State still has an open offensive coordinator position. This would look to be the most attractive offensive coordinator position in the country, if you ask me. It could rival some offensive coordinator positions in the NFL, and that's why there are some people that think Ohio State might go out and steal a coordinator from the NFL and bring him in to Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State is probably the first team, maybe not ever, but the first team in a while to have two players in the top 5 of the Heisman odds on FanDuel. Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sayin both tied for 4th in Heisman odds on FanDuel. This is probably the only offense in the country that has ever done that. It's probably the only offense in the country that does it right now. I mean, it's not uncommon to have a really big school and a really big program, really big brand, and have one player in there, but to have two, that is pretty incredible that Ohio State has that. And I think whichever offensive coordinator is interviewing for this job would probably look at that and say, yeah, I think I can parlay this into a head coaching position somewhere in college, or maybe get myself back to the NFL at a better job there. I mean, we saw what happened with Chip Kelly. He got a massive, like, $6 million plus deal from them. So the guys next to me here is Press Taylor. I know he has the Jaguar stuff on, but he's actually the offensive coordinator over there at the Chicago Bears. This is one that's been kind of rumored out there a little bit. Some insiders aren't really giving their thoughts too much on this, but my guy Eric Boggs, who did the transfer portal recap with me for Ohio State, he has been reporting with his insider over there that Press Taylor interviewed for the job, and apparently there is a possibility that Press Taylor and JT Bear, the Chicago Bears quarterback coach, could possibly come over to Ohio State. We'll see if that happens. It's a name that's out there right now, and it's something that would kind of make sense, especially when you think about how good the offense for Ohio State could be, but also, somebody that would leave that position there with the Bears as the passing game coordinator, You would think, how would that really go? I think I might have said offensive coordinator earlier. I apologize. He's just the passing game coordinator over there. But obviously, somebody with that kind of experience in the NFL would be thought of highly, especially coming in with Julian Sayin, Jeremiah Smith, and some of these guys in this offense that could really do some damage next season. So we'll see if that one happens. The other one that I think is also a possibility, Chandler Whitmer, the quarterback coach over there at Indiana. He was actually a GA for Ohio State at one point years ago. And so he does have a connection to Ohio State. Indiana did a fantastic job this season. I think if you're Ohio State, though, this seems a little bit underwhelming to some fans. Chandler Whitmer, for him to come in there. You have guys on the staff for Ohio State that have been coaching for longer than he has. Former quarterback at Illinois, transferred out to a community college, played there, and then played at UConn for a few years. He was a GA at Ohio State in 2019, made his way on over to Clemson, had some time in the NFL with the Los Angeles Chargers and then the Atlanta Falcons, and then just made his way over to Indiana as a quarterback coach and co-offensive coordinator too. He's not just the quarterback coach, but doing that over there. And it's not uncommon too for teams to look at Indiana and say, hey, you got somebody we want. I mean, you look at what happened with Tino Sinceri last year at UCLA. Now, that did not go well. I don't think Ohio State would look at that and say, oh, yeah, let's sign up for that. That went so well. But it is an indication that other teams might be looking at a similar situation like that. So we'll see what happens. If that were to happen, I would think that Whitmer would be more than just the offensive coordinator. I think you'd have to hire a bigger name than that. But we'll see what happens, and we'll go from there. The final name that I have here, and this is going to rub some Ohio State fans the wrong way, I know that, but Jonathan Smith, former head coach over there at Michigan State. Jonathan Smith actually does fit Ohio State pretty well. He runs an offense that's pretty similar to Ryan Day. And I think if you're an Ohio State fan, obviously, there's a number of Ohio State fans that don't appreciate the demeanor of one Jonathan Smith. And I get that. He is a pretty quiet, soft-spoken guy. Not soft-spoken, but he's just not the most authoritative guy that comes in the room. He's definitely not Matt Patricia. He's definitely not some of these other guys that you might think of. But he would be somebody that does fit the offensive structure of Ohio State. He is somebody that has been interviewing for offensive coordinator jobs in college football for a while now. He didn't just go right on back to Oregon State and coach there after getting fired at Michigan State. He didn't really even have a shot at UCLA. And so the thought is that if Jonathan Smith wanted to, he probably not if he wanted to. If Ohio State wanted him, they could probably get Jonathan Smith. And then there was also some reporting out there from Mike Washman, who I shared one of his tweets before, that Jonathan Smith was somebody that Ohio State had their eye on and might try to get an interview with. So if you want my opinion on who I think is going to be the next offensive coordinator for Ohio State, I still think they're going to try to pluck somebody out of the NFL. But if that doesn't work with Press Taylor, or if that doesn't work with Todd Monken, who's most likely following John Harbaugh to wherever he goes and stuff like that, Jonathan Smith is somebody that it could look like could be your offensive coordinator there at Ohio State. We'll see if it happens, but that's what we got for the offensive coordinator for Ohio State. Really, all the coordinator updates in the Big Ten. So stick with us. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. The Oregon Ducks land the Colorado Buffalo. Jordan Seaton out of the transfer portal. Jordan Seaton entered into the transfer portal about midway through January 12th. There was the whole story that happened with him asking for a video of himself so that way he could use it to say he was coming back to Colorado. Instead, he takes that video from the Colorado staff and uses it to announce that he's entering the transfer portal. Pretty bad move, if you ask me, but you know what? It's his prerogative. It's what he wants to do. He's his own man, and he has every right to do that. So after spending 2 years with the Colorado Buffaloes there with Deion Sanders, he is entering into the transfer portal. He is a former 5-star recruit, enters as one of the highest rated. I believe he might be the highest rated offensive lineman in the transfer portal. He was the highest graded offensive tackle in the Big 12 last season. But at the same time, there was also some questions about his play and some of the guys that he went up against. But he is somebody that is looked to be an almost definite first round pick there at wherever he goes next. So Jordan Seaton, could he go to Oregon? He's somebody that has his services being shopped around quite a bit right now. And if you look into, what he wants and everything like that, he has 2 years of eligibility remaining. He's 6'5", 330 pounds, moves really well, but he's also going to cost quite a bit too. North of $2.5 million is kind of what's been rumored out there. There's some people out there that think he could get close to 4, 5, maybe even $6 million if the bidding goes up high enough. He had his first visit at Mississippi State, which kind of led you to think, okay, well, maybe there are not as many teams in on him as you might think. Then he went on out and had an extended weekend at Miami. He had an extended weekend at LSU. LSU kind of tried to keep him away from going on other visits. Oregon was somebody that was wanting to get a visit from him, but it didn't look like that happened. So Alik Terry and Dan Lanning actually flew to Atlanta to meet with Jordan Seaton and see if they could put something together there. I think all of these visits personally are kind of not even really needed. He played 22 games there at Colorado. Like I said, highest PFF grade of an offensive tackle in the Big 12 this last year. He really did do a good job there. I'm not trying to say that he didn't or anything like that, but at the same time, this is what seems to be an NIL driven move more than anything else. And I don't think that Jordan Seaton is all that shy about making that public, that this is probably something that is very heavily influenced by NIL. Of course, you have the Deion Sanders factor kind of following him around and stuff like that. But the market is in so much chaos right now. There's really not been all that many elite offensive linemen that have entered in. And so if I do want to give any major props to Jordan Seaton, I have given props to him, but if I want to give any major props to him, it's how they've handled this to get him paid. I mean, they did a fantastic job of waiting until later in the transfer portal cycle after most teams have went out and got their guys and brought him into the portal so that way he could kind of maximize himself, maximize his earning potential, and he's going to earn big. Like I said, there's rumors out there of 4, 5, maybe even $6 million that could be paid to Jordan Seaton. That $6 million figure is something that sounds like it's probably over a 2-year thing, but with only 2 years of eligibility remaining and the ability to jump to the NFL, I don't think Jordan Seaton is sticking around for his next year. And unless something terrible happens, which nobody is rooting for that, but unless something terrible happens, like an injury or something, I think he's probably gone after this next year. And so the suitors you have for him are teams I named: Mississippi State, Miami, LSU, Oregon is in on this as well. Texas was thought to be a team that was early in on this, but it doesn't sound like Texas is pushing all that hard. Maybe they're doing more behind the scenes than people realize, and maybe they will end up landing Jordan Seaton. But overall, even though Oregon is the team with the highest FanDuel odds to win the national championship among these teams, it doesn't seem like that matters as much. It seems like all these teams, except for probably Mississippi State, would provide him an opportunity to play at a big stage in college football, provide him an opportunity to get paid very handsomely for playing in college football. And unless Oregon comes out here and hits that $5-6 million deal that some people are rumoring, I just don't feel like he's going to go to Oregon. Jordan Seaton is the type of kid that, and I don't know him personally, but from everything we've seen online and everything else, he just seems like the type of guy that would be fit very well for LSU. I don't even know if he fits all that well at Miami. Maybe he does, but he seems like the type of guy that would fit very well with Lane Kiffin over there at LSU. Feels like that would be something that Lane would obviously really, really want. I mean, they tried to keep him away from his Oregon visit and, trying to keep staying later and stuff like that. So that way he couldn't go to Oregon. It makes sense. And in this era, like you can't blame teams for doing that. Like I don't like it, but at the end of the day, this is the transfer portal. There's no rules. There's nothing out there. And so you gotta play the game the way you do to try to get these guys to go to your school. And I feel like LSU set themselves up really well for this. So I feel like we're probably going to get a decision here somewhat soon. Obviously, we'll see what that decision looks like in the coming days. But Jordan Seaton seems like the type of guy that would not want to announce this on a Friday news dump. when you get the Friday news, it kind of gets buried behind other stuff. It feels like Jordan Seaton is the type of guy that wants to make this decision as quickly as possible. But also maybe he drags it out a little bit longer and gets the teams to start offering some more money. We'll see what happens. I would guess this decision is probably made either tomorrow on Thursday, if you're listening to this on Thursday, it being today, or on Monday early morning. Monday early morning, you can really dominate the news cycle, especially in college football, with college football being over and the offseason and everything else. You can really dominate it if you do that. A lot of shows that day will start talking about you first and foremost. And I think that would probably be the way. If Jordan Seaton is willing to wait, I think that would probably be most likely. But I also think he could also just announce that next Thursday as well. So we'll see what happens here. Like I said, my pick at this point would be LSU. Unless Oregon comes in with a crazy offer, as we know they would be able to do with Phil Knight over there. If they really want him, sometimes it's just that simple. If Phil Knight wants him enough, Phil Knight's going to go out and get him. Maybe they do that. Maybe they offer him some shoes. Maybe they offer him a left tackle shoe deal or something like that. If they do, you know what? More power to you. More power to Oregon and the Ducks. Even if they don't land Jordan Seaton, I trust Alik Terry as an offensive line coach. In my opinion, Alik Terry is one of, if not the best offensive line coach in the nation. He's just done it time and time and time again with transfer portal players, with developmental players. It seems like whatever players you give Alik Terry, he is going to do that with. And if Jordan Seaton is really serious about his NFL development, and maybe he is more serious about it than I'm giving him credit for, if he is, you have to go to Oregon, because Oregon will set you up to be good in the NFL. I know Isaiah World had some struggles this year, had some issues, and there was that video of the Indiana, I think it was Kamara, that put him on his butt, and he's like sprawling all out and everything. But Alik Terry does do a fantastic job with his offensive lines, and I think Alik Terry would set Jordan Seaton up well to be a highly drafted player next season in the NFL draft. So we'll see how that works out, but that's kind of the latest on Jordan Seaton. We'll see if he goes over there to Oregon. A lot of drama, transfer portal. It's almost gone, but we still got Jordan Seaton to talk about. So there you go. We're going to be right back after this to talk through two guys that, Paul Finebaum definitely stems for the SEC a lot, and Josh Pate picked against Indiana quite a bit. They both had some things to say about Indiana in the Big Ten. We'll get to it right after this. Well, if you were on social media on Wednesday and Tuesday, you got quite the treat, because you saw two of the guys that are, have bet against the Big Ten, bet against Indiana quite a bit this season, come out and essentially say they were wrong. And I want to say this, I know Paul Finebaum gets a lot of crap, and we've given Paul Finebaum a lot of crap on this show. I do respect what Paul Finebaum did here. Was it the most sincere video in the world? No, I don't think so. But he did come out. He did say it. And even if he wasn't looking at the camera for most of the time because he was maybe trying to hide some tears, he did come out and say the Big Ten is the best conference. We'll get to Paul here in just a second. As far as Josh Pate goes, I've always kind of, I got some of my things with Josh Pate that I'm not super fond of, but overall, I think he's a good guy. I think he does a good job. I think he's entertaining. I think he leans a little bit too much to the SEC for my liking sometimes, but he did come out and he did give us a pretty comical response to Indiana winning the national championship, admitted where he was wrong. And I think if you're an Indiana fan, even if you're mad at him for picking the way he did this season, you still look at this and saying, yeah, all right, we like you quite a bit after that. Let me know in the comments if you're an Indiana fan, what are your thoughts on these guys? Did you feel like they were both sincere? Did you like what they had to say? Did you not like it? What were your thoughts? I'm going to get into it here right now. So let's go on over. Let's do Paul Finebaum first and see what he has to say.
There can be debate on whether Indiana had the best season in college football history, but
and that's true. There can be debate because we're never going to see these teams play together, right? So we're never going to see 2019 LSU. We're never going to see 2001 Miami. But the truth is that Indiana went 16-0, won a national championship. Pretty incredible. So anyway,
but there can be no debate. It is the greatest story in the history of the game.
And I appreciate him saying that, but Paul, you did just call it a cute story last week, and I got on you about that. But he's admitting he was wrong.
And what made it even more amazing is how people misunderstood what Kurt Signetti was doing in Bloomington. But let me assure you, nobody was more incorrect in understanding that process than me. Almost everything I said throughout the season about him and about Indiana was wrong, and it was an epic failure.
He's right. He said that it was a cute story. He said that Indiana did not. Well, the exact quote is basically it was not a good hire of Kirk Cinetti, or like they did regret the hire of Kirk Cinetti or something like that. He said that I believe at the end of last season after they lost to Notre Dame, which is completely preposterous to me. But he's right. Everything he had to say about Indiana this season was dismissive. Was, they don't have the talent, they don't have this, they don't have that, and they proved him and just about everybody else wrong this season. That Indiana did have everything that everything and more than what people said. Did they blow Miami out? No, but they blew out Alabama, they blew out Oregon, and they looked really good doing it too.
On my part, there was no question Indiana was the best team, and yes, the Big Ten is the best conference in the country. We congratulate Coach Signetti, Indiana, and the Big Ten for an extraordinary run.
Oh, there you go. Paul Finebaum, who has been a thorn in the side of many Big Ten fans, many people, not even Big Ten fans, just people wanting their schedules to get some respect. He comes out, he says that the Big Ten is the best conference in college football. We'll see how that sticks. We'll see how that lands. We'll see the credit that the Big Ten gets in some of these way too early top 25s. I put mine out. I only had 6 teams in the SEC in mine. I've looked at some others, and there are some others out there that have 8 or 9 in there. I don't know how you get to that point. I don't know how people have Auburn ranked. I don't know how people have Florida ranked. I don't know how people have some of those teams ranked, but they do. And at this point, it's, as much as it's nice to hear stuff like that, I don't want Paul Finebaum just to say it. I do want the respect from the rest of the country, not just in the rankings, but in the perception. Rank all the SEC teams you want, whatever. I don't care. What I do care about is if Ohio State beats Illinois, are you going to say Ohio State didn't play anybody? If Washington beats Iowa, are you going to say, that's not a good win for Washington? It should be a good win. It should be recognized as a good win because those are solid teams in the Big Ten. And even if they're not competing for national championships, they are teams that are very good and could beat other very good teams in the Big Ten. So let's move on over to Josh Pate. All right, got Josh Pate here pulled up, and he's got the clown nose on. I think this is his Sarah McLachlan special, he said. So you know what? For Indiana fans, this should feel good. Let's see how this one goes.
I am my own Sarah McLachlan special tonight. Let's go to the tape. October 11th, Indiana at Oregon. I picked Oregon. Indiana won the game 30-20. It got worse. December 6th, Indiana, Ohio State, Big Ten championship game. I picked Ohio State. Indiana won 13-10. It got worse. January 1st, New Year's Day, New Year, same me. Indiana played Alabama. I picked Alabama. Indiana won by 5 touchdowns. They had backups in, as I recall, in the second half. It got worse. January 19th, 24 hours ago, Indiana played Miami. Indiana outnumbered Miami in their own building. I didn't care. I picked Miami to win. Indiana won 27-21. I picked against them 4 times. I went 0-4 in those games. They went 4-0 in those games, en route to going 16-0. That makes them national champions, and it makes me a broken, confused man with nothing to console him but a cold microphone. Congratulations to Kurt Signetti. Congratulations to Indiana and that entire staff. I have been dunked on as painfully and repeatedly as I've ever been dunked on by anyone this side of 6th grade gym class and I hate that this is happening to me, but I will learn from it. You guys won, and I'm left here to pick up the pieces.
First off, great acting by Josh Pate. And I'm not saying great acting as in he's not being sincere. That's just great acting on his part. But I do think that he was being sincere here in the fact that he recognized that he was wrong in his picks and Indiana is the better team. Look, one of the reasons why I do have more respect for a guy like Josh Pate than some other people out there is Josh Pate does fess up when he's wrong, right? He came out here, picked Alabama to win the national championship. Alabama loses week 1 against Florida State. And he came on the show and he said, I'm wrong. I was wrong. I don't believe it's going to happen anymore. We'll see what happens. Obviously, it's still a long season, but he came out and said he was wrong. He backs up what he says, even when he's wrong. And so I do have to give Josh Pate credit there. Look, I'll be honest. I don't think that Josh Pate should be in the same conversation of like SEC homer type of person as a Paul Finebaum. And I've seen the comments out there of like Josh Pate's becoming the new Paul Finebaum of ESPN. I think that Josh Pate has too much respect for himself and his show and his quality for him to go out there and just make ludicrous statements like that. I think that Josh Pate has enough talent that he doesn't have to come out there. And I'm not saying that Paul Finebaum doesn't have talent. Paul Finebaum obviously is working off a reputation that he's built long over the years. And when you have a reputation at this point, this late in your career, you just have to go with it. And so I'm by no means saying Paul Finebaum is not talented or anything like that. I'm just saying that I think Josh Pate still has a lot ahead of him in his career, and I don't think he's going to resign himself to being the next Paul Finebaum or anything. Josh Pate is an entertaining guy. Josh Pate is a type of guy who has an expansive vocabulary, utilizes it well. He talks a lot about the SEC, but you know what? He's also from the South. I don't mind so much if people talk about a lot about the SEC. It's just about giving the teams who win their credit when they do win. And right here, Josh Pate gave Indiana credit. He said on Twitter that the Big Ten is the best conference. He said on the show that the Big Ten is the best conference. He gave the Big Ten credit. And as much as I do think that Josh Pate probably likes the SEC better than the Big Ten, which, you know, he has every reason, you know, every right to do that. He has, he can like what he wants and dislike what he wants. I also think that in this scenario and other scenarios, you've seen Josh Pate recognize that he's wrong, admit it, and move on from there. So do I expect every single media member that picked against Indiana to go out there and say stuff like this? No, not necessarily. I mean, I would even I would have to come out there and say, I picked Indiana to go 10-2 this year. I was wrong. Now, I think I was still one of the people higher on him than anybody else. I had him ranked 11th in my preseason poll. I don't think anybody else really had him over like 18th. I mean, there was maybe a few AP voters in there that was with me. You know, Zach, I think, had him either 11th or 12th as well. But as far as I'm concerned, like even me, somebody who was looked upon as one of the highest people on Indiana, I said they were going to go 10-2, and I said that they had a really good possibility of going to the college football playoffs with how difficult that schedule was. Long behold, they go 12-0. They win the Big Ten championship 13-0. They get a bye and they win 3 straight games in the college football playoff. They go 16-0. Even the guys that were out there telling me that Indiana was going to go 12-0 this season, I don't think even them were picking them to win the national championship. Maybe they were. Maybe you are somebody that said Indiana's going to be 12-0. I would love to see the tweet where you said that. If you link that down below, I would give you all the props in the world if you did that. But even if you didn't, if you're an Indiana fan, you got to love this season. You got to love the media eating their crow right now, including me. I got to eat my crow as well, even though I was one of the highest people in Indiana going into the season. I wasn't high enough. And I think a lot of people could learn a lesson from that, not just about Kirk Cinetti in Indiana, but also just in this new college football order that we have here. It's exciting. It's crazy. And only the best coaches are going to survive. There are going to be coaches that quit. There are going to be coaches who leave. And that doesn't make them a bad coach. That does mean they are a coach that could not handle it in this day and age of college football. We'll see what coaches can. One coach we know can handle it for sure is Kirk Cinetti. So Indiana fans, you have a lot to be thankful for. You have a lot to be grateful for. And you have a lot of media members that will most likely be coming out and saying, you know what? I was wrong. And let's give them their credit when they say they're wrong. But at the same time, let's also make sure they know next season, hey, don't rank him 18th. This is a really good program, a really good head coach. And that's all I got for you on the Big Ten Huddle this time. As you like I said, I'm JR. Follow me on all social media at JRs_rankings on Twitter, all those different places. Check out our transfer portal recap playlist here on the channel, just recorded with Michigan State. Matt Sheehan over there at Locked On Spartans. That one will be coming out later in the morning on podcast and on YouTube. If you're on podcast, those are all going to be in there as well. You can go in there and find them. We've had them going ever since Tuesday. We've been putting them out there, so just kind of go back. But if you want to find them all in one place and listen to them back to back, you can start over there on the YouTube playlist for the transfer portal recaps for 2026. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.